All right, welcome forward, my friends. Hopefully you're enjoying this training so far, and now you're ready to start implementing something that you can start getting some real results from. And so inside of this training, you're going to be learning from my partner, Dr. Bagge, the owner of Pro Kinetics Physical Therapy, who is currently running a practice that generates almost $2 million per year, that has profited this year nearly $700,000. And so his profit margin is absolutely insane. And the way he structured his systems and his patient experience and the way he trains his staff on sales is legendary, and the impact that it has had on our clients is absolutely insane. So I cannot wait for you to get your hand on it. What we're going to be covering is the first call script and how to turn strangers into excited buyers, how to pre-frame your rates, your packages, so that your prospects, whether they've paid cash for something before or they're a little bit skeptical, show up to that first evaluation excited and ready to learn. Enjoy.
Before you even get on, like, once you get in contact with them, you want to make sure, like, this is, the right, that you've caught them at a good time, right? They have time to talk. So we pretty much just open the call like, hey, Ms. Smith, this is, Dr. Ben with Pro Kinetics Physical Therapy and Formus. Wanted to reach out to you because we saw that you were interested in our Facebook voucher, or, saw that you were inquiring through our website, or, your friend, you reached out, you gave us a call, we were able to answer, something like that. Just open it up and explain why you reached out. I can ask them like, hey, did I catch you? But first and foremost, did I catch you at a good time, right? And they either say yes or no. If they say yes, you get a micro commitment or a micro yes. And this is powerful. The more micro yeses that you get throughout the call, the more powerful and easier it is for them to say yes at the end of the call. And if they say no, then that's good, because that's also good, because that means you didn't get halfway through building the value and asking questions and then lose all that momentum and having to start over again. And that's where I see a lot of people go wrong, and they lose that momentum. So making sure that you caught them at the right time too. So, and then also we state like, hey, I saw that you're having low back pain. We see this quite often, but I want to make sure that we can absolutely help you before we get you scheduled or anything like that. So if you could tell me, your story, how long has this been going on for, how this is impacting you, what you want to get back to, and just your story overall, Ms. Smith, that would be perfect. All right. This is kind of more word for word here that you guys can use, but in the general sense, I'm not going to just read it strictly to you guys, but big thing is set the tone on like why you're asking questions. Don't just dive into asking questions, because they're not going to know. Some people won't, if you don't give them the reason that you're asking questions, they're just going to be like, give you really short answers, because they don't understand why you're asking these questions. And they just want to either get scheduled, find out if you take insurance, costs, all that, right? So let them know what is in it for them. Why is it important for them to give you in-depth answers? Okay. And that is because you want to make sure that you can absolutely help before getting them scheduled or anything like that. Okay. You don't want to waste their time, right? So they understand that the more information that they give you, the better chance they have of not wasting their time and make sure that they get this issue solved.
Yep, huge. Right? And this piece here is so important, because it's about eliminating sales pressure immediately, letting them know it's like, hey, no matter what today, like, I just want to understand to figure out if what we're working on here can actually help you. If not, which happens all the time, like I might refer you elsewhere. But if you are a great fit, we'll talk about it. But I'll make sure that you leave this call with next steps on how to get what you're looking for. And so all sales pressure is gone. Now you're just having a conversation. They're not defensive. And by breaking it down like this, you're taking control of that conversation. You do not want your prospect to have complete control. Otherwise, they're just going to hit you with all of their objection questions right away. You're stuck on your heels and you're never going to close them. You need to take control of that conversation, let them know what the format is going to look like, why it's formatted that way, and then they're going to basically fall in line and follow along with the framework that you've laid out for them.
Yep. And so many people are like, how do I address the insurance question? The best thing is don't let it come up in the first place, right? Take control of the conversation. And that's so much more powerful. And that's what the great part about this script is here, is it allows you to take control right from the get-go, right? While you're also getting micro yeses. So now you turn a negative into a positive across the board. And you really just set the tone for the call. So it's super, super important there too. Just don't get the insurance question in the first place.
Ben, what do you do if someone calls and like right away, they're like, hey, do you take my insurance?
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, in case you get my name's Dr. Ben. Can I get your name real quick? Right. And then they tell me their name. Like, awesome. Yeah. What's the reason that I'm assuming that you're looking for physical therapy. What's the reason that you're looking for physical therapy in the first place, Ms. Smith, right? And they're like, well, I'm dealing with a knee issue. Awesome. Yeah. We see this all the time. Before we get you scheduled or anything like that, I want to make sure that we can absolutely help you. So yeah, if you could tell me your story, and then you just go right into this, right? So it's just really natural, right? Again, I take that question. I don't exactly address it. I just like, would you come up to somebody that's walking in the street and be like, hey, do you, or like CPT, do you take insurance? Right in their face? Like, it's kind of just like saying like, hey, let's be human to a certain extent. like to get your name real quick, and so you can kind of just take control over the conversation by asking a different question. So
that was so smooth, dude. That was like immediate too. Yeah. You didn't answer it. You just said, oh yeah. Like you implied that you will answer it, but you took back control of the conversation, kind of get your name, what's going on. Love that. Okay.
And then from there, you need to understand their why. How did this injury happen? Like I like to ask like softball questions at the beginning, you don't want to go into super in-depth, like emotionally charged questions right from the get-go. Just give them some softball questions, like how did this injury happen? How long has this been going on for, right? If somebody, and when they answer these questions, it also gives me an idea on like how much are they motivated to get this taken care of? Like Jordan mentioned earlier, if somebody says that this has been going on for like 3 years and they've seen everybody underneath the sun for this, they're going to have to be emotionally charged and a little bit more motivated than somebody that's just been dealing with a week, right? So that helps me kind of understand like, hey, maybe I need to ask these questions and do future pacing with people that have only been dealing with it for a week. So future pacing is essentially figuring out, hey, does it seem like be getting better, worse, or not changing? Like, well, it seems to be getting worse, right? And they're like, well, it's not really impacting me a whole lot. It just happened. Like, okay, if this continues to go on, how do you think this is going to start impacting you down the road, right? So it just kind of helps bring their pain point a little bit, just creates that pain point to be a little bit bigger versus you don't have to do that so much when somebody has been dealing, 3 years. So, and then also I like to ask, like, what have you tried so far to fix it? Just gives me insight into, have they seen chiro? Have they seen PT? Who have they seen for this, right? And what kind of answers they've been getting from people as well. And then one of my favorite questions, and it's imperative to be asking on the phone script, is how does this impact me? Okay, because nobody's really probably ever asked them that question. Right? They've been getting, anytime they've seen anybody else, all they get is, what is your name, date of birth, and insurance? And they give somebody a call, right? So a lot of people don't really ask how this has impacted them. They just assume, like Jordan mentioned at the beginning. So asking how this has impacted them. And a lot of people will be like, oh, it's not really impacting me. I'm just having some pain with running. Well, how's going up and down stairs? Oh, I guess I've been avoiding stairs. I've been having to take the elevator, at work. Just start diving deeper into like, hey, if somebody, don't take it for a surface value or face value when somebody says it's not actually impacting them a lot, because obviously it is, otherwise they wouldn't have reached out. It's your job to figure out how does this actually impact them. And they might be like, well, it's not really impacting them. Like, okay, what does your workouts look like right now? Like, oh, well, I'm not doing any lower body stuff right now. I'm not doing strength training for lower body, and I'm not running anymore. And then you can kind of get in those piercing questions about why is it important to them to be strength training? Do we have a timeline for this? Like, yeah, we got a race that's scheduled in 3 months, right? So make sure that you're really diving into those piercing questions like Jordan mentioned earlier as well. So
talk on this section forever because there's so many different like piercing opportunities that come. Like when they say, what have you tried to fix this? And they say, we've gone to a physical therapist before. You can talk all day about that. Like, oh, like, how did that go? And then they say, well, it didn't go so well. Then you say, like, any ideas? Like, why do you think it didn't go so well? And so you can start to figure out like what is important to them when choosing a physical therapist. You can then pull back and use when you repeat this stuff back to them, when you kind of tailor how you present what the solution is going to look like for them. So you'll always get surface level stuff with this. Just make sure that you chunk down on whatever they say. Don't just move on to the next question. Like understand. Again, seek to understand.
Yep. And I really like the question too. Like it sounds like you're pretty active. If you weren't having this pain, what would your week look like with regards to physical activity and exercise, right? It helps them realize just how much this is impacting them, and helps them imagine getting back to doing everything that they want to be doing and how important that would be to them as well. So that's another good question that I'd love to ask. So, and that kind of ties in a little bit into a nice progression into establishing goals. If you had no pain at all anymore, what would be the first few things that you would start to get back to immediately? You figure out what is most important to them. What would a successful, I like to tell them like, hey, as physical therapists, like we have our goals for our patients, but honestly, what's most important is what do you as a patient, Ms. Smith, want to get back to? So with that being said, what would a successful outcome look like for you? And what would you like us to ultimately help you accomplish? This is like one of the most important questions that we get really great answers for, and just helps that emotional component to come out and really figure out what's important to them. So, and then you like ask, what do you feel like are the biggest obstacles to getting to that goal? This helps people realize that they need your help. Like, well, I've tried YouTube exercises, I've tried, friend recommendations, tried rest, and I just need professional's help, right? So they have, again, talked themselves into needing your help. Well, so, and then you can ask like, why do you feel like you're not reaching your goal currently, right? So these last two kind of play in together into each other as well, but it helps just get people to actually acknowledge that they need help. Okay? And sometimes they might know it internally, but once they speak, it actually becomes reality to them, which is really powerful.
But what I love to do too, like when someone tells me their goals, I like to challenge them a little bit. Like if it's to run a marathon, it's like, well, why is that important to you? And then maybe it's, I've gained a ton of weight and I just want to prove myself that I can do it. Or, my wife runs marathons. I've never ran one with her and I really want to get into it as well, so we can have that thing to do with one another. So like challenge them on their goals and figure out like why that goal is important to them, because it might lead to something where it's like maybe their goal right now is to just be able to get back to benching the same amount that they benched before, but maybe there's a follow-up goal with that where they're trying to actually like improve even further, which are things that again you can tailor and use, especially if you're a performance PT. It's going to help you a lot throughout the journey. So make sure, again, no surface level answers, always understand why their goals are what they are and why they're saying what they're saying. I love this section.
Yeah, and then this is actually one of my favorite questions, honestly, and something that we added to the phone script a little bit later in the game. Is one of the last additions that we added, but asking how did you hear about us and why do you feel like we're the right fit for you, all right? Or what's important to you when choosing a physical therapist? My favorite one is how did you hear about us and why do you feel like we're the right fit for you, right? It gets them to sell themselves on you and helps you understand what was the thing that they liked about you on your website, or whatever medium that they found you, what was most important to them on that, and capitalize on. And also just gives you good insight into your marketing strategies and like which ones are working, which ones not. So we make notes of that too. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. And then also like we asked like earlier, what have you tried before? What worked, what didn't work? And if they say like tried physical therapy, well, what's important to you now that you've been to physical therapy elsewhere that you're looking for a different this time around, right? And then you capitalize and double down on that when you're explaining on how PT works with you, okay? What they can expect.
We're going to circle back on that in a little bit. There's another thing that I love to do that's kind of in the presentation stage that works so good to get people to sell themselves to you. It's awesome.
Yeah. And then another thing that I really like to do is repeat back to them everything that they said. Again, you're probably the first, especially even if somebody's been to like, dozens of other professionals, you're probably the only person, once you repeat back to them everything that they said to you, you're probably the first person that they actually felt like that somebody actually finally truly listened to them. So we are writing down everything that you can write it down. You can type it up on your laptop. You can take notes on your phone. That's how I do it, is I take notes on my phone. We have a front desk who writes it down. Some people type it up, whatever mode works best for you. Just make sure the typing isn't too loud and distracting on the laptop. But we write down everything that they said. And then after they say like, I think you're a great fit because of this, X, Y, and Z, like awesome. Yeah. Based on everything you tell me, I think you could be the perfect fit for us. But I want to make sure that we got everything, that I didn't miss anything. And then repeat everything back to them word for word. Like this usually takes me about 2 or 3 minutes to repeat everything back that they said to me. And we get such great responses from people. They're like, yeah, that is perfect. Like they're amazed. Like you'll hear in their voice just how shocked they are. Like, yeah, that is like perfect. And you're a really great listener. Like we get that all the time. All right. So you build a lot of rapport with people and it makes a huge, huge difference by just repeating this back to them. And then when they get done, like, great, awesome. Based on everything you told me, Ms. Smith, you sound like a perfect patient that we just really helped for a shoulder specialist. They just got done working with somebody about 3 weeks ago. They're having X pain, having difficulty doing X, Y, and Z. Yeah, they just finished the last physical therapy session with us about 3 weeks ago, and they're back to X, Y, and Z now. And now they're actually scheduled with us next week, where they're like, holy crap, I got back to running, and now they just plan to do a half marathon in 6 months. And so now we're helping them do training and performance for them as well. So this helps pre-frame continuity even when they're done with PT. Well, just by setting the tone there too.
Right. And something I want to add and layer into the repeat pack stage. Something that you can do that works super well, that feeds perfectly into the tell a story phase. It's a little bit more like advanced, but the way I like to do it is say, super confident that we can get you a great result, but just so you understand why I'm confident, let me tell you why. And then you basically say, know how you said that you've been trying to get back to the gym, and every single time you do squat, you have to go down in a lot of weight. Remember when he said that? Yeah, well, so-and-so who was just working with went through this exact same thing. And so you have the same effect of repeating back to them what problems they talked about in their journey, but you can also layer in like, here's why I know that I can solve this thing specifically that you just mentioned. And so it kind of layers it all in together, and it just comes off really good when you just say, hey, because everyone just says, hey, I know we're a great fit for you. Confident we can get you a great result. Then they go into the pitch. But if you can explain to them that not just that you're confident, but why you're confident in a way that repeats back to them all the stuff that they just said to you, it's a really impactful thing that if you can layer that into your sales as well. And then obviously that ties in very well with your stories too.
Exactly. So and then from there, I tell them like, hey, yeah, so I know you'd be a great fit for us and who we get the best results with, but I want to make sure you feel like we're the right fit for you too. I like to ask like, if we haven't already, asked about like physical therapy, if they've been to that. Okay, it's a nice transition here, but it's also a great place to also ask them, because they've been doing most of the talking. Like, you want to get permission from them, hey, to get permission to start taking over the conversation a little bit more and doing more of the talking, right? And so it's like, is there, if I kind of tell you like how we physical therapy and what you can expect? They're like, yes, right? Another micro commitment that you get from them. Okay, micro commitments make it easier at the end of the call to get to have them say yes to working with you as well. Okay, so I essentially say our practice is significantly different than traditional physical therapy, in the sense that usually with other clinics, they would ask you to come in 3 times a week, where you spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes with the actual physical therapist before you're passed off to an aide or assistant, in my opinion, just doing a lot of the same exercise that you could be doing on your own at home, or ones that you've already been doing. With us, it's quite a bit different. Every session is one-on-one for an entire hour. You'll always be with a doctor of physical therapy. You're never going to be treated by aides or assistants or anything like that. Usually the first half of the session is a lot of hands-on, soft tissue, manual therapy to help decrease any tightness or pain tightness that's contributing to this pain. And the second half is going through an extensive list of exercises for you to be doing at home. And as long as you're doing those at home on your own, there's no reason that you need to be coming in to see us 3 times a week as you would with traditional PT who utilize aides or assistants. Like, our big thing, Mrs. Smith, is we want you to be independent. We don't want you to rely on us, another physical therapist, a chiropractor, massage therapist, or anything like that. We essentially want to give you as much education, exercises, tools, and guidance for you to be as independent as possible. So with that being said, patients typically just come in once a week. Over that week's time, you should have made progress. And the next time you come in, we're leveling it up and give you new exercise to work on with the end goal of getting you back to X, Y, and Z. Okay, we're never going to waste your time coming and doing exercise that you've done in the past or ones you could be doing at home, unless you have questions, of course, or want to review them. And then lastly, Ms. Smith, how we do PT is different, is we have a 3-step process. Our first phase is obviously want to decrease the pain that you're having. The second phase is really address the root issue. I think that's what's been missing over X amount of time. All right, once we fix that root issue, we want to not just zone in on this knee issue, but we want to be looking at the ankles, the hips, low back, shoulder, and make sure nothing else is going to pop up and get in the way of you doing X, Y, and Z. All right. And then, like I mentioned earlier in the other story, we have patients that once they're done with PT, they're like, holy crap, this is awesome. I have a body that I didn't know was possible. And I'd like to kind of see how far I can push it. I want to be able to run faster, run further, cycle further, lift heavier, be able to go on longer hikes with my family. And so we work with people on that basis as well for performance and helping them achieve bigger goals than they ever thought possible. So I know that was a lot of information, Mrs. Smith, but in a nutshell, does that sound like what you're looking for? And so everybody's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. All right, literally get this like 90% of the time. All right, so they're like, yeah, that sounds exactly what I'm looking for. All right, so you can ask, if you feel like they're kind of just like not super excited about it, you can ask like, well, what about it specifically? You can ask just, again, piercing questions there. Most of the time, I don't ask them why though, if they're like super excited. I just continue to use that momentum, and I get them scheduled. All right, so from there, we get them scheduled. Like, great, awesome. I apologize for limited availability, Ms. Smith. We usually typically fill up about a week or 2 in advance, but we actually had a couple of reschedules come in, so we can squeeze you in at X time, at X date, X, Y, and Z. Which one works best for you? And they're like, this time. Okay, great. What I'll be doing next, I'll be creating your patient profile with us, Ms. Smith. And upon logging in, you'll see some intake forms. One of them being the evaluation accelerator form. The only information I need from you is X, Y, and Z. So I get their name, date of birth, and their email address to send that over to. And I explain like the evaluation accelerator form, like, hey, this will help speed up the evaluation process and allow you to get even more treatment on that first session. All right, so we get that information, and then like I go over cancellation and our location. Like, hey, also wanted to let you know we have a very strict 24-hour reschedule policy. I don't say cancellation. That's something I do different than really anybody else. It's just because why would somebody cancel, right? I don't even want to put that in their brain that why would they cancel? I say we have a very strict reschedule policy. If you need to reschedule any future appointments, Ms. Smith, make sure to give us 24 heads up, just so out of respect for patients that are on the wait list have a chance to be seen, because we do fill up usually 2 or 3 weeks in advance. I like to throw in the 2 or 3 weeks. You can see I've threw that in there a couple times because like it helps solidify that, hey, a lot of other people, you guys are busy. Like, people want to work with people that are clinics that are busy, right? It means other people are working and doing the same exact thing that they're doing. They don't want to be the first pioneer, okay? And just kind of somebody's guinea pig, right? They want somebody that is booked up and whatnot. So we just state that, hey, just our start our patients on the wait list, make sure to give us at least 24 heads up so they have a chance to be seen and get the help that they're looking for. All right. Now it's just not, when we mentioned reschedule policy, it's not just benefit for us, but they are doing us a disservice to somebody else that needs help and is in pain, right? So when we can tie that into that, it could decrease reschedules substantially. And then from there, I go and like, hey, Also, I don't know if you're familiar with our location, but we do have free parking in the back. I'll be sending over a detailed map of our location and well as a free parking in the back. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. So I know that's everything that I need, but most importantly, what questions do you have for me, Ms. Smith? And I'd like to state what, not do you have questions? All right. I want objections to come up. I don't want them to say, no, it all sounds good. And then they text or call 24 hours later and say, hey, I actually found a clinic that takes my insurance, right? But you didn't know that was a barrier or even a concern because you didn't give them a safe space to ask the question you need to ask me something, right? So this is going to help bring out any objections that they have, okay? And a lot of people in this state at this phase will ask about insurance or cost. Some people won't. Like most of the time, say probably about 50% of the time, we actually have to bring up cost or insurance at the end. They're like, nope, everything sounds great. I'll see you guys next date. All right. But you will get some people that are like, oh, also I had a question about insurance and costs as well. All right. So what I state is we're technically out of network with insurance because sadly they do not let us work with clients in the way that we found to be most successful. But that being said, all of our patients do have insurance. All right. I normalize this because people think that if you go to an out of network clinic, it's for people that don't have insurance, which isn't true. Right? Normalize it. What we do is provide you with a super bill or a special receipt that has all the information that you need to submit to your insurance. We provide you with an app that takes less than a minute to submit these things, and then they'll take care of the rest. Typically, patients are reimbursed between 50 to 80%, depending on the insurance if they met their deductible. Initial evaluation is $225, and then you and your physical therapist and our shoulder specialist will sit down and discuss how many sessions are we anticipating that this can take. But like I said, this is something that he or she sees day in and day out, and typically patients in your situation only need 6 to 10 visits with us and they're back to doing X, Y, and Z, and I relate back to their goals. So that's how physical therapy works with us, Ms. Smith. Okay, there might be like a long pause, but most people are like, okay, sounds good.
Nice. It's crazy how well you know this, man. I could be on a completely different section.
Yeah.
Going, I'm like, holy crap.
Literally, I've literally done this like literally over 1,000 times. So I probably say it in my sleep, honestly. But it's just so well versed and just refined, over literally thousands of calls. So obviously slow it down when you're talking. I just did it for time purposes. You want to be putting in pauses, change the tone of your voice, putting gaps in there as well to let, especially really important pieces, just really marinate, okay? Really slow down and whatnot. I just went through really fast just for time purposes, okay? So that's out there.
So
okay?
when you do get here and you do get objections, do you have anyone saying like, well, I really wanted to use my insurance?
Honestly, as we've rinsed and refined this phone script, we barely get any objections. If we do get objections, they're usually not the right fit. And honestly, we actually, for people that are the wrong fits, instead of us having to push it away, we actually hope that an objection comes up and then we can double down on that and that's our out, right? So most of the time for patients that we built so much value, and that's what I think so many people focus on. Hey, how do you address the insurance question? Or somebody has objections on cost or insurance. How do you address that? Or what do you say? Best thing is, just like we said at the beginning, prevent it from happening in the first place, right? Now you're battling upstream. Why don't you fix things that at the very beginning upstream, prevent that question from happening in the first place? How do you do that? By building so much value and piercing questions that they don't even care about cost or insurance, right? So that's the thing is we don't even really have to do much for overcoming objections because we just don't get them. Unless they're the wrong fits, we really don't have to overcome objections. Okay. One thing that you can do is if we do get somebody that's that we know that they're the right fit and that we can help them and that insurance is in the way or cost or whatnot, you can ask them hey, let's say insurance didn't reimburse a dime. If you got back to X, Y, and Z, Ms. Smith, would it be worth it to you? Okay. If they say no, it wouldn't be worth it, then the conversation's over right there. It's just not important to them enough to do it. Right. So you can also the thing you can do is you can look up their insurance information for them. Because if they call their insurance company, they're going to get answers, but it's not telling them the full picture because insurance wants them to go in network. Okay. I encourage you guys to call your insurance company and ask what your out of network benefits are and state that you're thinking about that just to see what they state. So we like to, if we do get objections and somebody that we know that we can help, we will look up their insurance benefits for them. We use Ability and look it up, and then we'll get them scheduled still. Hey, why don't we get something on the books tentatively? Just so, because we do fill up really quickly. I imagine these openings will be gone by the end of the day today. Let's get you just tentatively confirmed, right? So you have a micro commitment, and then you get them a call back and explain the benefits too. So that's what we do if it's for somebody that we know that we can help and we get insurance objections, then we will look it up for them as well. Okay.
If someone says like, hey, this all sounds great, I know I really want to do this, but because I like, me and my spouse, like we always talk about investments, I got to ask them before I spend $225. What would you say?
Yeah. So first and foremost, a lot of times spouse objections actually aren't spouse objections. They're just using their spouse as a cop out. So we used to get, like, before I really had this phone script down and had the script I wanted to use, I got spouse objections like 10 times more than we do now. Is less people married? No. All right. It's just because they were using their spouses as a way out. Okay. That's not to say that some people aren't, like, that's not to say that people actually, it's not an issue. All right.
Some people
they could be. Some people are serious about it, and it's the truth. So I don't really get too pushy on this. Like, hey, totally understand, wanting to consult with, your partner or spouse or whatnot. If you have a spouse, you'd be like, hey, I'm the same way. What's a good time to give you a call? When are you planning on speaking with your spouse? Okay. You can ask, like, great, I'll give you a call back and discuss with you then. You can also hop on a call with the spouse. I don't get too pushy with spouse objections, but we really just don't get them a whole lot anymore. So, but I don't know. I know that, like, Jordan, how you overcome this, because I know sometimes you'll get this too.
And this really isn't something that you want to push too hard on, because some people are serious, and it's like, if they're serious about it, it really comes off the wrong way. And so the way that I handle it is, I make sure, as I say, spouse aside, that this is something that you want to do and that it's going to get you the results. There's no questions there, to make sure that there's no, like, the real objection isn't they don't think that they can get the result. And then if they say, no, I know this is exactly what I need, I just got to get, talk to my spouse, make sure that it's okay with them. And then I always say, follow that up with, like, okay, perfect. Now, when you go and talk to your spouse, like, what do you think they're going to say? And they'll probably say, like, oh, I think they'll say that I can do it because that's what they think you want them to say. But then you challenge them and say, well, if they did have something, against it, like, what would they say? Like, what issue would they have with you moving forward with it? And then this forces them to say, like, what is the real thing that might stop them? And so they'll say, well, it might be kind of expensive. And then when they say that, you respond with, okay. And when they tell you that it's too expensive, what are you going to say to them? And so this usually, you'll get, like, the deer in headlights. They're like, well, I don't know. I didn't think that far. And so this is where you're able to properly prepare them on how to have that conversation with their spouse. So they don't just go there and say, like, hey, I found a physical therapist in town that I think can help, but they don't take insurance and it's $225. That's not a pitch you're going to win against a spouse that knows absolutely nothing about the value you built up during that phone conversation. And so you want to challenge them, figure out what the real objection is, and then equip them with the information they need to help to overcome